Okay, to some of the most disturbing studies which I've found, I have a few which we'll go through. Okay, so the first one comes from the Journal of Chemical Neuroanatomy, published not that long ago, and it's titled Microwave Frequency Electromagnetic Fields, EMFs, Produced Widespread Neuropsychiatric Effects, Including Depression. Again, so this article mentions the voltage-gated calcium channels, and the highlight here is EMFs cause at least 13 neuropsychiatric effects, including depression in humans. So if we scroll down to, where is that point? So this is just the abstract. So voltage-gated calcium channels occur in very high densities throughout the nervous system and have near universal roles in the release of neurotransmitters and neuroendocrine hormones. So wireless technology messes with your nervous system, and among the more commonly reported changes are sleep disturbance, insomnia, headache, depression or depressive symptoms, fatigue, tiredness, dysesthesia, concentration and attention dysfunction, memory changes, dizziness, irritability, loss of appetite or body weight, restlessness and anxiety, nausea, skin burning, tingling, dermographism, and EEG changes. So I think this is super interesting because a lot of my friends who are GPs have all said that in the last 5 years, it's like at least 2 to 3-fold the amount of depression and anxiety related disorders, mental health disorders that have come through the door. Now, I do think you could make the case that a lot of that has been because of the destigmatization of mental health. So more and more people are speaking up, which is a good thing. But where I connect the dots is that we've probably been living in a 4G world for the last, I suppose, 5 years, and maybe a 3G world, say, the last 10 years. Now, what this article to me is saying is that wireless technology affects calcium levels within your brain cells, which would then affect your brain's ability to produce natural neuroendocrine and neurotransmitters like dopamine. Now, you could easily make the claim that depression is multifactorial and it's very complex, but I would make the claim that more or less our problems psychologically are more or less the same as what they were 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago. And more or less, people are still getting their hearts broken. People still commit, violent acts. People are still unhappy in their jobs. They're still not sure of what they want to do in life. To me, all of that's a constant. But what has changed, especially in the last 4 years, is the fact that we live in a 4G world. And that the amount of wireless device use has also gone up 5-fold in the last, 5 years or so. And I suppose you wouldn't need to look up any studies which show the ever-increasing rate of people with depression. I suppose you'd only need to really look around your social circles, and I think we'd all know at least a couple people who are battling it. Here's another study that I thought it was interesting. So this study comes from the US, and it comes from the National Institutes of Health and Public Health Service, and it's a government-run body. And it looked at I won't read this out for you, you can read it out for yourself, but it basically looked at the effects of 2G radio frequencies and 3G radio wave frequencies on rats and mice. This one's also come out quite recently, as you can see. And the study basically exposed rats and mice. They did it over short term versus long term, and they exposed them to approximately 10 minutes on of radio wave frequencies and then period off, totaling about 9 hours a day. And it's just trying to mimic, I suppose, the amount, when you pick up your phone and you text someone, and you look at your phone for X amount of minutes. But I'll show you what the findings had said. Okay, so if we keep scrolling down to conclusions, this is all available online, so feel free to look it up yourselves. So here it is, conclusions. Under the conditions of these 2-year studies, there was unequivocal evidence of carcinogenic activity the GSM modulated cell phones at 1.9 gigahertz. So male mice based on the combined incidences of fibrosarcoma, sarcoma, or malignant fibrous histiocytoma in the skin, and the incidences of alveolar, bronchiolar adenoma, or carcinoma combined in the lung. There was equivocal evidence of carcinogenic activity of GSM modulated cell phone RFR at 1.9 gigahertz in female mice based on the incidences of malignant lymphoma, all organs. There was also equivocal evidence of carcinogenic activity of CDMA modulated cell phone RFR at 1.9 gigahertz in male mice based on the incidences of hepatoblastoma in the liver. So this study basically showed that over a 2-year period, rats and mice exposed to 2G and 3G radio frequencies grew tumors of all different kinds. Tumors in the brain, particularly the male rats. Tumors, all kinds of different tumors. Here's another study I looked at which came out from Sweden. So this one's a bit older because it looked at the effects of cordless phones and the incidence of glioma or tumors on people. So this study basically found that those that used cordless phones before the age of 20, which is me, had higher rates of glioma than later age groups. So I was going to include it in this video, but I realize I'm running through lots of time here. But just quickly, I will say, turn off your Wi-Fi when you're not using it. Have it on for like a block period of the day, say between 4 and 6, and then turn it off. I don't think there's any real need to have it on 24/7. The other thing I will say is, if you are looking to run internet in your house, use an Ethernet cable. Have an Ethernet cable connected directly to the wall to whatever you're running it through, your PlayStation or your computer, so you can watch your Netflix. Don't use Wi-Fi. If you connect the Ethernet cable from your Wi-Fi router to your device or your computer, you need to go into the configurations of your Wi-Fi router and turn it off. Just because you have an Ethernet cable running, it doesn't mean that it's not emitting Wi-Fi radio frequencies. Last thing I will say is turn your mobile phones on to 3G instead of 4G when you're using it, and when you're not using it, put it on airplane mode. Especially at night, turn it off. Please. Especially you guys, my cousins who may be watching this, my family, just do it. I do have ideas for other videos. Another video I wanted to make was to review the literature which basically says Wi-Fi is safe. Because I've looked into it and it's quite weak at best. So we've mentioned some of the symptoms to look out for. And I will say that, so radiation has cumulative effects, and that the effects are going to be non-linear because everyone's genetic makeup is different. And probably the most important part is this. The absence of symptoms does not mean the absence of effect. You may think that, well, I don't feel tired, I don't have depressive symptoms, I don't have any of that stuff, so I'm okay. But just because you're not feeling it doesn't mean that it's not affecting you. And I would even go one step further in saying that it's probably more of a curse, because people who are sensitive to the effects of EMF have it better, because their bodies are just telling them right to their face that, hey, I don't feel well, something's wrong. But if you aren't feeling any effects, it's like, oh, well, it's very easy to be blind to it. One last thing I wanted to mention was, let's change slide, is 5G. So on that electromagnetic spectrum, standard 2G, 3G are about approximately 1.9 gigahertz or 1900 megahertz. Wi-Fi is about 2.4 gigahertz, but when 5G rolls out, it's going to be about 24 to 80 gigahertz, depending on where you are in the world. This is a huge problem because that's about 10 to 30 fold the amount of radiation that's just going to be in the air. Another thing worth noting is that the people that are creating 5G are, they're just engineers. They don't have any background in any sort of cellular biology or any medical background whatsoever. And what I've read is that to maintain a 5G network, you need a router approximately every, is it 10 houses or 10 houses or 10 meters? I can't remember, but you need a router every so often, and they're just going to be everywhere. They're going to mount them onto, street poles, street lights, and the effects of this stuff as well. It's non-linear, meaning it's going to be very different for each person because everyone's genetic makeup is different, and people are going to get very sick, and that's why I'm that's why I'm making this video, because I'm just so compelled to have to tell this to people. So I was wondering when 5G is coming to Sydney, Australia. Okay, so 5G rollout Sydney, Australia, and it's coming. Where is it? I believe it's next. Where did it say? It's next year, essentially. Here we are. Optus announces 5G rollout 2019. Telstra's the same, and we need to get a conversation going because there are ways there are ways to improve this, I should say. So that's it from me. Way over time. Thank you all for listening. Turn off your Wi-Fi. Tell your mom I love her. I'm out. Peace.